I have a new podcast that I'm doing once a month where I sit down with 2 video game writers each month to talk to them about video game writing. It was in part because I wanted to as soon as I started video game writing, which, you know, I'm in my 2nd year now and I still feel like I don't know anything. Or I also repeatedly am learning how different other studios operate. So I was like, look, I know all these people. I think that is the single best thing about me having a YouTube channel is that I know a lot of people and can get access to people. And it's not just a person sitting at a computer yelling about video games. It's people who work on video games yelling about video games. So I was like, cool. What if I just sit down with different writers every month? And I'm trying really hard to get somebody who's worked on localization at FromSoft, because I was like, that's a facet of writing I don't know anything about. That I feel like they'll be cautious talking about, but I was like, I know that it's really important, and I know that the guy who's probably best known for working on localization for FromSoft games has written a lot of lines himself, and that's part of that job. And it's like, I just know so little about it.
It's a massive part of it, like the amount of adjustments and tweaking. It's fascinating to be on the dev side of that into other languages, like the number of conversations I've had to have with people about kind of like, you know, a particularly English language joke that's in one of our games, and then kind of working it through and making suggestions of how to make that funny in French or whatever.
Totally.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
It's way harder than people think. That's why it's not called translation. It's called localization. It's a whole process. And I was like, I really love to talk, because that's cool. Still the kind of writing I just love to talk to somebody about. So yeah, I have some really cool guests lined up. You have like different guests per... 2 different guests every time. And the biggest struggle is that every time that I'm trying to do it, I'm trying to piece together people that I think would also get along, who don't necessarily know each other. It's like arranging a dinner party. Almost. It is. It totally is. I'm like, but I want this person to make this person feel comfortable, and like it's been hard, but yeah, I just sit down and talk to different video game writers every month. 2nd Monday of every month, it's going to publish, and I keep having people be like, "How do you have time to do these podcasts?" It's like, it just takes an hour to record. That's it. I just hit record for an hour, and then I send it off to somebody else to edit, and I'd have these conversations with people by choice anyway. So what I'm doing is just sharing it with everybody else so that I'm just not hoarding all the knowledge.
But you also do a lot. It's kind of like, it is
I mean, sure, I do a lot.
Put out there and have a full-time job at the same time.
Yes, but recording podcasts...
It's not nothing.
Not that difficult, which directly ties into the situation today.
I find it very difficult.
That's why you do it every week?
Hi, everyone. My audio cut out. So I probably talks over you there. My audio cut out. No,
you're fine. Welcome to Play, Watch, Listen. It's just me and Mike today, because we weren't even going to do an episode this week. We were just going to skip doing this week. But then the biggest video game news of probably the last 10 years dropped. And I was like, okay, I really want to talk about this. I feel like we should talk about it. Austin does know that we're doing it, but we're not sure if he'll drop in or not. He might. Or otherwise, this will be the first episode he misses. But yeah, very impromptu. I was just like, maybe 2 hours ago, I was like, Mike, I just want to talk about it. So let's do it. So here we are talking about... I was trying to come up with a Banjo-Kazooie coming to Switch tomorrow.
Yeah.
Finally.
I'm excited. It's finally here
again.
On Switch.
No, so of course, if you somehow missed, again, the biggest gaming news of the decade, Microsoft is buying, you can't technically say bought at this point, is in the process of buying Activision Blizzard and every single studio that they have under their wing for $68.5 billion. I keep wanting to say million, and then I remember
I accidentally said $1 million in conversation the other day and was laughed out of the room. People were very mean about that.
Today,
it's not fair.
I just made a comment where I was like, I just feel like they should have rounded up and gone for the 69 just to commit to the meme. And somebody was like, Alana, that would be like an extra $300 million. And I was like, oh, you're right. Oh, that's so much fucking money. Jesus Christ.
None of these numbers make any sense in your defense. Like, they are ridiculous.
It's absurd. And like, it's crazy that it's 68.7 billion is what it is. Even I was still off. It is an unthinkably large amount of money, and even more than they bought Bethesda for, which was already an unthinkably large amount of money. Microsoft.
What was Bethesda?
15? Let me check. How much did buy Bethesda for? 7.5 for ZeniMax.
7.5
7.5 billion. This is $68.7 billion. Mike, what were your reactions to this? How did you feel about it?
I was shocked, like genuinely, like shocked. Like usually with these things, not to be that prick, but usually with these things, you've already heard about it, or there's like been
for sure. The fact that this didn't leak,
like some mumblings, or just like not even necessarily like a public leak, but you hear things, you hear the rumblings, or you at least hear like something massive's happening at 10 a.m. or something. Like there's some kind of conversation. And this one, genuinely, I had no knowledge of. None of the people who normally whisper me the cool news, none of them did. So this, I guess it was, I don't know, I guess it was tighter than the usual, but I guess it is such a massive topic that, yeah, it was surprising, like kind of shocking, and kind of, it's one of those things that immediately you just want to unpack,
totally.
Which I guess is what we're doing here, right? Like just kind of step through and kind of figure out what the hell just happened. How about you? Was it the same for you? Was it just a similar? Because you woke up to it, right? It was already the internet was already. I
happened to be awake at 5 a.m. and it was published at 5:35 a.m. And when I saw it, I was just sitting. I think I was having breakfast, and I was just looked at my phone, and I audibly, alone in my apartment, went, "What?" I was just so shocked. Just
my
so
Slack
unexpected.
Just lit up with like everyone wanting
just so unexpected. Would never have guessed. This would never have been on my bingo card. So that's obviously the immediate reaction. And then my follow-up immediate thing that came to mind is obviously the situation with the treatment of employees at Activision Blizzard and the pretty much objectively poor leadership of Bobby Kotick. Not a fan. And I was like,
it's a hot take. Do you want to commit to that take?
Look
that
how spicy I am. I had someone warn me. Medium. I have had someone be like, "You have said some pretty nasty things about Bobby Kotick. You work in the games industry. You should be careful." And I was like, "Fuck Bobby Kotick.
Fuck that.
I don't care. Yeah. If somebody comes to my job because I said fuck Bobby Kotick, take my job. I don't need it."
He's my least favorite soon to be fired CEO in the games
industry. I sure hope so. So that was my first thing. My first reaction was, what does this mean for the employees at Activision Blizzard? Does this mean better treatment? Phil Spencer now being promoted, I guess, is a shadow part of the article that came out, to CEO of Microsoft Gaming. I don't even know if that division officially existed prior to this.
It might be to kind of sit Activision underneath. It's probably just kind of an org reorganization.
Yeah. So Phil seems like a great guy. Every interaction I've had with Phil, he's been lovely, and I feel like he does genuinely care about people.
Yeah, ditto.
So that seems like a massive positive, but it's also like, like you said, you just want to unpack it. First up, like, what does this mean for the lawsuits? Is that Microsoft's burden now, or is that separate?
Ultimately, yeah. I mean, I assume they were against the company. Well, I don't know enough if they were against individuals, but I doubt they were against individuals, because you would normally make a suit against the company. I assume.
So I guess
that would be their burden.
That the company would have been cheaper because of the pending lawsuits.
So that is the ungenerous read. Is this was an excellent time on a purely capitalistic level to purchase Activision, because they were doing very badly. Well, comparatively, their shares were in a low place, so it was a bit of a bargain. As ridiculous as it sounds to call this a bargain, but
I know, but that's why it's even comprehensible. Maybe if they weren't in the situation they're in, where it's also like, no one talks about this. I feel like Blizzard hasn't actually released a game since Overwatch. They've released expansions and DLCs, and I think maybe
like Hearthstone was earlier, right?
Yeah. Overwatch is their last actual game release, unless there's something very recent that I'm forgetting. So Blizzard's not really putting games out. The Activision branch, I mean, there are many franchises that I'm like, oh, maybe we bring back Prototype. I don't know how many people are asking for that, but I certainly am.
I would love to see more Prototype, but
and then obviously Call of Duty is kind of evolving in the space that it's in now. Obviously, with Warzone is still pretty popular. It's still one of the biggest franchises of all time, no matter how you chalk it up. It is one of the biggest franchises of the year, even if you're like, your growth's a bit stagnant. It's still a juggernaut, so still huge.
It's still big in a way that most video games can't even imagine being. Yeah. Like it's on a different level. And I think that's the presumably that's where most of the value of a company, like that's what makes Activision worth 10 times from what you said of what Bethesda is yes, it's these franchises like Morrowind's awesome, like Wolfenstein is like the newer ones I think are absolutely fantastic, but those are video games for video game players. They're very successful within that realm. Call of Duty is pop culture.
Candy Crush.
A different, Candy Crush. Yeah, of course I'm forgetting how enormous that side of the business is as well, aren't I? Yeah, like there's all of these things that are like stuff that you're grandparent who's never played video games has heard of culturally and is aware of. Like, it's a different tier of kind of success, and that's presumably that's where a lot of that value is kind of coming from. In terms of, to answer your question, actually, just to go back to of what this means for staff treatment, yes, I imagine Microsoft is obviously very incentivized to make that conversation into a positive one. So Microsoft are famously respected for their treatment of staff generally.
So I worked there about 10 years ago. It was when I just started out in the industry. I worked for Microsoft, not in a full-time capacity, but I did work for them. And I was treated very well. They were very kind to me.
I think Spencer himself has said that they've not got the perfect track record, and it's unlikely the company of any size would, but they have a reputation for being good, and they would want to maintain that. So I suspect in terms of people who are working at Activision, this is probably going to improve your situation. I would assume that there'd be a lot of HR stuff, a lot of support stuff that will actually kind of improve as a result of this. Well, because your company's not being run by the same person it was being run by before. So.
The thing about, I think there are a number of things about Activision Blizzard structurally that I feel like I dislike. And one of them is the pay disparity between Bobby Kotick, their CEO, and the average employee. So technically, on average, an Activision employee is paid a bit more than the rest of the industry. However, compared to the disparity versus what their executives are earning, it is one of the biggest gaps in the industry, and by a disgusting margin. It's so big.
Well, his parachute for have you seen that spreadsheet of the different ways Bobby Kotick could leave the company and the amount of money he would get paid out?
That is a huge part of this. It's a bummer is that no matter what,
even that number is obscenely. Have you seen the chart? Shall I send it to you?
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that. I could maybe look it up. What is it like? Is it something he made?
I'm gonna find. It's something he made. Yeah, he put it up with a smirking emoji.
True.
No.
Someone made it on Twitter or something?
Yeah, or someone found. I'm just going to pop it up over to you because.
In any case, it sounds like he will be out once the deal closes. But yes, he's probably going to get a lot of money. And that's the thing about
$270 million.
This is fine. It's so another thing that has been a little bit troublesome about how Activision Blizzard have been operating is a lot of layoffs, very consistently a large amount of layoffs. And this is something that usually happens with mergers that is, I would consider to be a downside, is that there will be layoffs, but I think their layoffs are most likely to be, if they do have them as part of the merger, which again, I think they probably will, other than Bobby, it's probably people in accounting and HR. And I still think that sucks. That's still a bummer. I don't want anybody to get laid off, but the benefit is obviously the company clearly needs a culture restructure. And I, again, my head first when I saw this news was not to the console wars that have flooded the internet. It was immediately I hope that this is good for those people. That would be real nice. I'm opening this link you've sent here. Apropos of nothing, here's how much Activision Blizzard has to pay Kotick if he is terminated as a result of a change of control of the company per his employee agreement. Oh. So this was public, maybe?
I think this was made public by, as part of, a shareholders report or something at some point.
Oh, wow. This is really interesting. Oh, my God. The total, the largest
I thought this would
total.
be the kind of thing you'd be into. Yeah, it's
Jesus, that's a lot of money. So termination by Activision Blizzard without cause or termination by employee for good reason following a change of control is probably what the term is, which would be a total of $292 million.
Also add to that the shares that he would own in the company that would be sold off at the same time. So there's actually a lot more money as well, just in that kind of side of it. So yes,
my God.
he will make more money than the town you live in will see in a lifetime. Yeah. That's an exaggeration.
Ooh, yeah, I live in LA. Okay, just
I was gonna say
not a
LA,
great example, but everywhere else.
The audience member who lives in a town of 50 people.
Yeah. The city I was born in. Probably not competing with Bobby Kotick's salary. Shout out to Cairns, Australia. So yeah, that was definitely my first thought is what does that mean? And yes, it does seem like, while they didn't explicitly state it, probably because they can't yet, that he will be gone and hopefully far away from the games industry. Says this is Business Insider has said that sources said that both Microsoft and Activision have agreed that Kotick will depart once the deal closes, which could take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. But yeah, the press release did say Bobby Kotick will continue to serve as CEO of Activision Blizzard, but I feel like that said just for now.
It's very hard to imagine him not being out of the picture at that point.
It would be such a bad just PR for Microsoft too. I don't feel like you want to take a company and not take that. And the part where it became really negative was when it came out that he had known for years about claims of sexual harassment and rape and didn't do anything about it. Pretty serious stuff. So then,
very serious. Yeah.
That again was my first talking point. The second thing that I feel like a lot of people are talking about that I wanted to ask your input on, Mike, is the suggestion that this is some kind of monopoly that's being created, and if this could go against trade laws.
Oh well, that I'm out of my depth, and due to
what is your take?
Came up on the last episode. It certainly puts a lot of power in one place. I'll say that. Like, as discussed on last episode, like, British libel law is very strict, so I would never accuse any involved company of a crime. But no, I think I don't know enough about monopoly laws to have a coherent position. But yeah, it definitely adjusts power and it centralizes power on a specific platform, which is really interesting and reminds you of like different points in history where that has happened. So, and has happened, with Microsoft in the past, a couple of points in time. So it's interesting. I don't know enough about the legality to put it. What's your answer to that question?
I mean, same, obviously. I'm not a lawyer. It's not a thing that I'm an expert in, but I feel like this is not something that I think is a realistic concern just because it's not quite enough. They still have so many competitors, especially when you consider like the existence of even Amazon and Apple, the ones that we don't look at as core to the console gaming market. It's just too big, and they're still not as big as Tencent. So if it hasn't happened to Tencent,
the other factor, right?
Who everybody ignores, Microsoft is still technically not as big as Sony in terms of gaming either, even with this acquisition.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just based on those numbers, I guess we could get more information about that over the coming days of somebody saying that it's been pushed above, but it doesn't appear to have been. I don't believe that this is making them overtake Tencent. The revenue isn't quite enough,
Tencent
so.
I can believe. No, I meant the Sony thing. That's
I don't think
surprising
so.
To me.
But that could change. I don't know.
But also, I think to an extent, and this is true of us developers as well, like, I think, console is a subsection of the gaming industry, and it's actually like a smaller one compared to, mobile, desktop, various other stuff. Like, we're not...
Well, I think console's still bigger than desktop.
Is that true?
Yes, I think that console gaming is still bigger than PC gaming.
I'm probably wrong then. Okay.
But I think by a surprising amount, but that mobile gaming is the juggernaut.
Yeah, mobile dwarves it all.
By a lot, which Tencent is all up in. And I think that King, outside of obviously Microsoft's interest in cloud streaming, is, the biggest acquisition for them in terms of mobile, because nobody else is really involved in that market. And I've been saying this for a while. I don't know if I've ever said it on Play, Watch, Listen, but I very firmly believe that you should expect every single one of your favorite franchises to end up on mobile. Every single one of them. Everyone from every major publisher. If they aren't already, expect that to happen sooner rather than later. And I think it was like looking into Take-Two's finances that really tipped me off to that I was like, oh, everyone is going to do this. You should expect everything on mobile.
What's interesting, I think in a lot of cases, a lot of the IP holders of the big IP, they're actually going about it in such a way where they're kind of creating little enclaves. Like to an extent... Yes, 100% there's Call of Duty on mobile, but if you're a Call of Duty console player, Activision probably historically has been trying to prevent you from knowing or caring about that. Like, obviously, if you're super into it and you're looking at all the press releases and stuff, you're going to see it, but the average kind of player, the kind of player who wouldn't watch a show like this, is not actually necessarily aware of where they're at. And
That's true, and it is huge. COD Mobile is massive.
Yeah.
But you're right, that I don't see it advertised to me.
Because because their assumption, I think it's an accurate assumption, would be that to the average console player, it being a mobile game would actually devalue the brand to them a little bit. And it's an interesting, and likewise to that mobile audience, they're going to go to that audience and produce a version of the game that's tailored to that audience, and they probably don't want that audience to think, oh, this must be a hardcore console game. That's actually going to work against their interests.
Interesting.
So there's actually a splitting, whereas we used to be in a in a world with kind of this monoculture where a franchise was targeted at a specific audience, now because everyone's so much more fractured, you get a franchise or an IP, and then you've got these tons of things all branching off, specifically tailored to different people. If you look at Marvel's a good example, right? Like Spider-Man is there for your hardcore console gamer. You've got what's the name of the XCOM Studios game that's coming up? Marvel XCOM. I can't remember what it's called.
Let me look
it's
it
not
up.
Dark Crystal.
It's not Dark Crystal. XCOM Marvel.
Evil Particle.
Midnight Suns.
Midnight Suns.
Yeah.
There it is.
I would not have remembered that. You're fine.
But that one, that's
also
your
2K.
kind of that's your kind of nerdier hardcore audience being targeted, and then you've got all of these mobile games which maybe you've seen an ad for you on YouTube and never seen, but those games are making phenomenal money. So every single kind of area of the audience is being kind of catered to with one Spider-Man character.
You don't think that there is any reason for the current console focus side of it? Like, I don't know how to phrase this question. You don't think there's any reason that they would want to push me to mobile? Like, do you think that there is a reason that they could be like, okay, well, you have this amount of time in your day where you are not playing on your console because you're not at home. We want to get any period in between where you are still spending money, so we want to port you over to mobile. Because my guess is that is coming. That maybe we're not there right now, and I think you raise a great point that it could be because to me it would devalue something. Obviously, the don't you guys have phones thing from BlizzCon. Like, I feel like it's
a great example.
Yeah, the core gaming market has been pretty
booming
hostile.
An additional game.
I have no interest in mobile games.
I get why the audience reacted. Yeah,
totally,
I get why they reacted that way.
I don't want especially when you're excited about something and you get that from a franchise. And I actually think that game's pretty good. But outside of that, it's something that usually you're just not interested in. It's hard to get me to play a mobile game, but I do feel like the wave is coming of them being like, these are good enough. We want to get you over there so that we can take away that screen time that you're spending on Twitter and Instagram.
I can see it happening.
If there's screen time that's giving, I don't know if publishers have access to the data, but like the amount of time people do spend on their phones, and they're like, why aren't you spending that playing video games? We need to monetize your screen. I feel like that wave is coming. I will resist where I can.
But even then, I bet it'll be something that is tailored to your hardcore. So it will be more the kind of the second screen experience that's kind of showing you your stats on the multiplayer game you just played, or allowing you, information or like a deep dive on something.
I do already use Backbone.
It won't be trying to put you to a match 3. It'll be trying to put you in, some extension that's tailored to you rather than... especially, and you can see that with the mega IP, so things like Marvel, where there are like 20 different mobile games, and each of them is kind of playing to a different crowd or a different genre. I think that's where these things are going.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, this is just such a huge win for Microsoft in that regard. It's got to be the Candy Crush part of it. It's probably going to be worth so much money we're not talking about. Well, Candy Crush, no, it's a big deal.
And the numbers on Candy Crush are still ridiculous.
Oh, terrifying. Yeah,
utterly ridiculous.
It's tremendous. So... yeah, I mean, I forgot what we were even talking about prior to this, but where, the monopoly stuff is concerned, I think that, like, I don't love any one platform holder owning everybody. And obviously we're not there yet. We're very far away from that. But there's something about just in general, having one company own everything is not generally very good for competition. And I hope that this doesn't create a ripple effect of more of this happening. I feel like my reaction to the studio like Double Fine being bought was like amazing. I love Double Fine. They're small. Now they have more support.
Good for them.
That's
resources.
Awesome. Congrats. Like, congratulations to Microsoft. Double Fine's incredible. When it's Activision Blizzard, it's more of a... again, I hope those employees benefit from this, but otherwise, like, I'm not like massively concerned, but it's not something that I think that is generally good for players at a large scale if this is something that continues to happen and Microsoft keep buying people up.
If it becomes a standard, like, it's also for like the little fish like me, it's interesting because we benefit greatly from the competitive nature of the consoles and the fact that they are fighting for the same games, or that you've got so someone like me, in most cases my games are going to release on more than one platform. If there's a game that hasn't, then there's a good financial reason for that. But usually I'll release on multiple platforms, so I benefit from an ecosystem which is trying its hardest to kind of appease, frankly, people that matter, financially successful games. Really great example of this is like cross-platform play, which was nowhere and was banned on most of the platforms, and was something that a lot of indie developers were kind of pushing for and wanting to do cross-platform kind of support in their games, and were laughed out of a lot of rooms because this isn't something that serves us. Why would we want to encourage people to buy a game on another person's console? How does this help? And then you have something like Fortnite come along that suddenly incentivizes, like, no, we need players to be able to migrate over to our platform to play this game that they're already playing. So therefore, suddenly those floodgates open in a world where, the console company is also producing all of the content for the console. You don't have that back and forth. You don't have those kind of negotiations that trickle down. You don't have people trying to find business models to support multi-platform games or support kind of encouraging multi-platform games over. If a multi-platform game goes from being, the kind of thing like Call of Duty that will make everyone involved a ridiculous amount of money, to a multi-platform game being the kind of thing I would make, where everyone does okay, but it's a multitude smaller. That gives me less room to negotiate in those meetings, and that's potentially a knock-on. I think there's benefits which we can get to in a second, but there's a negative there in terms of essentially, this is what happens when it's just you and me. I become someone who's arguing for the free market, which is a bigger shock to me as anyone.
Austin.
But there's something to be said for a marketplace where other people with bigger pockets are trying to achieve the same business models that I'm trying to achieve. I can get benefits from that. I can get kind of treated better as a result of that.
I guess there's also a world where if you own, all of the studios that come under, is Vicarious Visions also part of this?
I lose track.
I think Vicarious Visions is Vicarious.
Is that or is that an EA one?
Visions. Are they owned by Activision?
They are Activision. Yep.
They are. So you've also got some of their smaller studios like Vicarious Visions and Toys for Bob that have shown that they can work on different things. And you could make a case for, instead of, going to a Bithell Games and funding an indie game, or like how the ID at Xbox program has traditionally functioned, where I imagine that somebody pitches something to the ID at Xbox team.
Yeah, and you go in with something and say,
why wouldn't you go to the studio you already own? This obviously is complete speculation, but in theory, that having more and more and more studios, you would be incentivized, if you're Microsoft, to lean more heavily on the studios you own than taking games from other companies outside. Feel like that is a fair assessment, or do you think that they will still incentivize?
You can even see that within Activision. So Activision used to publish third-party games.
Yeah.
Activision turned over the last. Someone was pointing this out to me the other day. Activision 10 years ago were releasing games made by developers who were external, and they kind of consolidated everything within them.
Sekiro was surprising because it was a departure for Activision to publish.
You're right, that was an external thing.
Everyone was like, whoa, I remember they used to do that. So does that mean Microsoft owns Sekiro now? I guess.
Well, they would own publishing rights. But yeah, it's so yes, that's definitely a thing, but it also is part of a much bigger issue, or a much bigger kind of push that's happening with Microsoft, is they're in the rolling content business now. So they need a lot of it. They need a lot of games, full stop. Yep. They need a bunch of stuff to get you to keep on hold of your Game Pass, right? That's the business model now. This is not.
No, it's a whole new games industry, and that's why the console war aspect of it, especially. It's of zero interest to me anyway. One of my colleagues tweeted today something that was he was being added about it, and he was like, do you think that because some of my friends work at Bethesda that we're not friends anymore? We all like each other's games, and I
don't think the audience at large understands that you will be at an industry event and the famous senior people at each of these console platforms that you're fighting for are sat at a table laughing and drinking and enjoying
having a great time. We all just really like video games.
We're all professionals, yeah. So it's not. There's no. It's yes, of course. There's business incentives and business reasons to kind of that you would have partnerships.
Yeah, but I don't feel like this is
but everyone gets on. Phil Spencer is going to shake the hand of Jim Ryan if he sees him in the corridor
100%.
at an event.
Yeah.
That's just inevitable. That's
Both
where we're at.
Phil and Herman are really nice dudes who like they don't think that way. And my point to that is like even outside of that fabricated drama that's really coming from audiences who admittedly have been funded to have a tremendous amount of loyalty because it's convenient.
And told by marketing teams, for 20
have
years,
loyalty,
right?
please.
To kind of,
I say in my PlayStation shirt. That I don't think that Microsoft is playing that game. They are doing something very different, which of course is Game Pass as a service is not about consoles. It is about that service. It's on PC. I use it on my PC more than I use it on my Xbox at this point.
Yeah.
They are competing with what Apple is going to do next and what Amazon is going to do next in a different way. That I don't think it's about that. And they did I think release the stats yesterday too that Game Pass now has 25 million subscribers. That's a lot of money. That was up from 18 million in January last year, so it is growing pretty significantly. And they do have a hell of a lot of video games. And of course, in this press release, said that they'll be bringing Activision games to Game Pass as well. Of course. There are already 20 Bethesda games: Dishonored, Doom, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Wolfenstein, all of which are huge franchises that I love to bits. Sure. So that's
but they have to keep that rolling.
Yes.
Because those Bethesda games, awesome, brilliant games, but you've played them.
Yeah.
You've seen them and they're there. And that's the interesting challenge here is the business, like the way these both Xbox and Sony used to be and the way Sony still is for the moment, is very much around this kind of hit driven, you make a God of War which brings in an audience and then you keep them around and you're under their TV at that point, so then as long as you ship something really cool every 6 months or so, you're going to be fine.
And I really hope that Sony sticks to that. Like of all the people being like, what if Sony should come back and do this? And I'm like, as a player, I have to say it's completely removed. As a player, I hope that Sony doesn't. I think that PlayStation right now releases so many just incredibly high quality games. They're just so good. And I think that can happen when you're doing the exact model that you suggested there, where it's about like getting people onto the PlayStation platform. And I think the minute that it becomes about like this purchasing war of trying to get more and more and more, then Sony's goals would change and we would potentially lose these like incredibly high quality blockbuster titles that I think are some of the best games I've ever played. I hope that Sony continues to do exactly what they're doing because I'm so glad that they're doing what they do in the industry as a player.
And selfishly, as a business owner, I really hope they do too.
Yeah,
because it'll be great for me. And this is the other aspect that I think is worth pointing out, and I think is interesting. I've talked about this on the show before. As an indie, and I'm sure lots of other indies are looking at this exactly the same way. When we see big companies doing something over there, it's usually an interesting sign to maybe go and look over there. And what's interesting here potentially is if Microsoft is going to have even more kind of their own in-house content coming out to Game Pass, that opportunity that's there right now for indies to have kind of a big Game Pass splash, that might start to somewhat decrease in the same way as the Nintendo Switch eventually decreased once other bigger companies kind of started doing Switch games.
Interesting.
So you start looking around as indie developer and going, okay, where's the next gold rush? Where's the next opportunity? And we've cycled all the way back to Sony almost with the way that things were in the Vita era. At the end of the Vita, and I think this is all public now, hopefully it is, at the end of the Vita's life cycle, there were indies were essentially kind of utilized as a way of making interesting content come out on the Vita, and you could definitely point to the Vita and go that the last year of the Vita's life cycle in a serious kind of release way was kind of pretty awesome because there were all these really interesting indie games, there was loads of opportunities, and that gave my generation of indie developers this amazing head start. Thomas was alone. That was the first console it came out on was Vita. I got to use the Vita to negotiate my way onto PS3 and then from there built up something there. So weirdly, it does open up this interesting opportunity of this. If that content starts to push over towards Xbox, then there's maybe an opportunity within Sony or with Sony to kind of find, and to be clear again, similar to you, I've not had any conversations. You're the first person from Sony I've talked to about this. But I bet my pitch to them for an interesting kind of PlayStation exclusive indie game, if I were to make one, would be better received than it would be 6 months ago. And that's there's a potential interesting opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see some of that part of the marketplace going over to Sony and doing interesting things. And still on Game Pass, like obviously there's still an amazing opportunity there, and there's still an amazing opportunity on Switch. But these things work in cycles, and it's something we always have to pay attention to as, people who have to like worry about the rent of our stuff. Being able to feed.
I know the last time we spoke about Game Pass extensively might have been even a year ago, and obviously I have Game Pass. Again, a lot of my colleagues have Game Pass. Great service. But I feel like at the time there was definitely a landscape of, I had seen, people at Tiny Build, for example, had been like, our game was very successful. Descenders is the example that I use most often of a game that I played on Game Pass that found a lot of success on Game Pass and has made more money by virtue of being on Game Pass. Where a lot of the conversation in the negative speculation on Game Pass is that it devalues games, that the devs aren't making as much money. That doesn't tend to largely be true. It was almost like being on Game Pass was a massive marketing push for a lot of smaller studios.
I mean, look at what are the indie games we talked about in the last year. I would bet 80% of them were Game Pass games, specifically for that reason. Does a game like Unpacking? Say again?
Inscription was not.
Unpacking doesn't build up the kind of interest and audience, again, within kind of quote-unquote gamers who wouldn't necessarily buy an indie game, will absolutely play it in Game Pass. And then because it's a charming, brilliant game, that audience
Boyfriend Dungeon
talks about it.
Boyfriend Dungeon was on Game Pass.
Did well from it. Mm-hmm. There's an enormous marketing push to it. And also, these games are not going on there for free. Like, they are being paid to be in there as well. So there's also a financial... that differs from game to game, and the audience isn't aware of what that number is, but like... It's not nothing. Having been in those kind of conversations, it's not nothing. And if you see a thing showing up in one of these services, they're not doing it purely out of altruism. There's a financial incentive there as well.
So my question is, do you think that, the more studio acquisitions that Microsoft gets, they have a lot of studios now, that could potentially have a negative impact on those individual indies because they are now competing with Call of Duty for that spotlight?
It could make us less attractive. Like it's and that's not even like that's not a negative on Microsoft. Like, it's reasonable, right? If you've got a fridge full of food, you're not going to buy as much when you go to the supermarket next time. Like, if you've got all of this stuff at home, why will you necessarily go out and be as aggressive in wanting to acquire that content? So I don't think I wouldn't classify as this is terrible for indies, but I think it would by default it would create kind of an ebb and flow in desire, which is always the way. Like, these things ebb and flow. Like, there's it's happened like 3 or 4 times in the time I've been like making and selling stuff with my own company. Like, this just feels like maybe the opportunity for another kind of area to rise as kind of the indie gold mine, the space where no one's looking right now, could be something. It's definitely something I'm looking for, and I'm sure lots of other developers are looking for. What's that next thing going to be? It's
really interesting. Like, until you mentioned it, I had never really thought about how it for sure was Switch. Things were selling more on Switch than they had sold on previous platforms by a dramatic margin. I remember, I think it was Shovel Knight found tremendous success. And then
in my career, it was Vita. Because there was nothing, and they could, because they weren't getting any third-party support on Vita, so they reached out, and you had
why not Hotline Miami
in the UK? You had
Gravity
Geo
Rush
in the US doing it. Yeah, and you had all of the indie stuff. Thomas was alone. All of this indie stuff that kind of used that opportunity and did very well as a result. Then a lot of us indies who were on that kind of parlayed that into PS3 support. Yes, you can have it on Vita, but we'd also like to be on PS3, which at the time was like kind of a rare enough thing that meant something. So that was an open audience. Then the PS4, that first year on PS4, there weren't many games coming out for PS4. So a lot of indie games did very well in that moment. Then, as you say, it moves to Switch. Then it moves to Game Pass. And now what's next? And it's not a zero-sum game, to be clear. Like, our games still sell very well on Switch, for example, even though I'm saying that's like 1 or 2 gold rushes behind. But, you're trying to find where that new blue ocean is that you can kind of jump into.
Super interesting. It makes sense. There is like a clear path where that just shifts. And the good news is, even if this thing that we're vaguely speculating about, that maybe that gold rush isn't Game Pass for indies anymore, it doesn't mean it's going anywhere. It's not a net negative for the indies overall.
We'll still put our stuff into Game Pass. Yeah, and the players won't be left behind. Like, these once a marketplace has been opened up, we'll still ship games there. Like, it would take a lot to get me to stop shipping a game on Switch. Like, there's a massive audience there who buy our stuff. Like, this is more about where the new opportunity is opening up rather than necessarily where everywhere else is shutting down. So yeah, it's definitely not zero sum. But that's just kind of an immediate kind of reaction to just kind of knowing that Microsoft now have access to some big stuff. But I don't think it's going to be, I think a lot of people are thinking this is going to be like the next Call of Duty will be Xbox exclusive. That's not how this will trend.
I also don't think so, though. I do think that's very interesting. It's like, what will they make exclusive and what won't they? And I feel like, you know, people inside the industry seem to be split on that. People who I've spoken to over the last 24 hours who work at different companies across the board seem to be disagreeing on that. So it's you know, as someone who has both, I'm good either way. I don't play a lot of COD, but it's going to be interesting to see what the approach is, because it's so easy to say, but Call of Duty multiplayer is such a juggernaut that why would they not still want to make sure that the PlayStation...
I'm interested in, like, what are the answers you've had? Like, what's the broad kind of, what's the range of opinions?
So I would actually say, I've spoken to a lot of people over the last 24 hours about this. I would say majority of people think that, and obviously this is all guesses, informed guesses, guesses, that Microsoft will not take Call of Duty off of PlayStation, and that potentially only single-player campaigns, so that they may have single-player campaigns or DLC content or extra content, or potentially early. That was one that I was suggested to me more than once, that it would be early, that you would get COD on Xbox, where they've had, you know, those marketing deals with PlayStation in the past. But they will not take the multiplayer experience off of PlayStation overall, because it would be a bad idea for them financially to do that. That you still make the sales every time somebody buys Call of Duty on PlayStation. You don't want to remove that possibility, especially when that's on top of Game Pass, because you know that a lot of PlayStation players could be subscribed to Game Pass. Why would you remove that sale? It seems like an odd choice.
And also, a fan you create today could be someone you migrate over later. That's a lot of, I think, the PlayStation games on PC kind of conversation as well. Of like, it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily just make money from a franchise at this moment. You make money from a franchise over the lifetime of the audience who's interested in it. So you can kind of, there's you want those on ramps still, I think.
Well, one interesting suggestion, speaking of the on ramps, that I saw was somebody said that they think that that you'll be able to play Call of Duty on PlayStation, but that you will, inside of the game, get literal ads for Game Pass. That you'll get like your little blip where they usually give you like, here's what's happening this season. You'll get this early on Game Pass, and you'll see an Xbox logo inside of a game that you're playing on PlayStation. And they were like, I'm positive that's what they'll do. They'll advertise Game Pass on PlayStation. Like, interesting.
So that's interesting. So that's actually a brilliant example of exactly what I was talking about earlier about the trickle down of these kind of things. So there are obviously lots of rules on all consoles about not mentioning other consoles or other games offerings on other consoles in your game. Mm-hmm. That is an absolute kind of, no one can do this. That's terrible. Don't do that. You know, you will, if a logo or a button prompt that is specific to a platform other than the one that you're on is in your game, you are in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And not in a serious way, but like,
no, it's not a law, but they'd be like, whoa,
it's
whoa,
not
whoa,
a law
whoa.
being broken.
Yeah.
But like, if a company as powerful in this moment as the company making Call of Duty changes that rule or gets an exemption from that rule, that can open up the door so that I can have, you know, when I release Game X on let's say Switch, to make it unspecific to this specific conflict, if I release a game on Switch called Game X, but I want to promote Game Y, and the Game Y is a PC exclusive for the time being, that maybe opens a door to me having like a little banner ad or something in my indie game that kind of can push my audience. Because you'd be amazed like how often I'll see a conversation around one of our games, you know, and if another game of ours isn't released on that platform, they will not have heard of it, and their friends will be saying, "Oh, have you tried this other game that Biffle's made?" And because it's not on their platform, no, I've never played it, and I probably won't because it's not on my platform. So there's a real opportunity there. Again, like, once someone powerful who brings a lot of money to a platform wants to do something, that can open up an opportunity for the rest of us to kind of also do that thing. That's an interesting.
Yeah, I only saw one person say that, but the person who said that, I'll keep everybody anonymous.
To be completely honest,
no, the person who said that was adamant about it, but it was only one. It's been a lot of different takes, and of course we are speculating just as much as everybody else is about this, and the speculation. People can be as adamant as they like about some of it, and like, we don't know. Like, you truly don't know. And
as I said at the start of it, I have genuinely no inside track on this, and usually we do. Usually we've heard something or like this. I have no knowledge or information about.
I had absolutely no idea. And of course, part of the conversation of that is that Minecraft is really what throws it out the window. Is like, Microsoft bought Mojang. And that's still on all platforms because obviously that was beneficial to them. So yeah, we don't know what they're going to do. Be interesting to see. But you touched on this a little bit earlier, so let me circle back to it. What do you feel like the positives are from your perspective, from like an industry perspective of this, like outside of talking about, potentially, creating a different kind of competitivity? Like, what are your gut reaction positives of this kind of acquisition?
Positives?
And again, people. Shout out to the people. We hope you get treated better.
Shout out to the people. Hopefully they will be treated better. I think that is definitely the best possible positive. Sure. Hopefully, I think there's enough incentive on enough people who need that to happen that will happen. So that's good. I hope so. I guess the other positives of it, honestly, acquisitions in general are. It's in a way it's good because they do tend to remind people with money that they can just buy companies. Like, sometimes I think that's useful. We're definitely in a period right now where a lot of acquisitions are happening. Like, there's several players like just buying up lots and lots of stuff, to the extent that I don't think I've started a call with any business partner or colleague in a different company in the last month without them making a joke of, so have you been bought by X yet? Because there are like 2 or 3 people who are buying everything, and a lot of it's happening
Take-Two's
quietly.
doing it too, and nobody's mentioning it. Take-Two just bought Zynga.
Yeah, and it's so that there's that's a potential benefit to the individuals who own companies, obviously, but to the industry in general, I think I'm trying to think of another positive. It really is a positive, I think, just to the people directly involved more than anyone. And I don't know if there's a generalized positive outcome to one big company buying another big company, beyond the kind of nuance that we're talking about of like, maybe it opens up some opportunities, it shakes things up. Anything that shakes up the industry is usually good for bottom feeders like me. Yeah. Like it's rats do very well straight after fires. So
it makes sense. Yeah. You've referred to yourself as a rat
there,
you did, yeah.
It's probably not great. But
yeah, I think it makes sense.
How about you? Can you see positives beyond what we've discussed?
Again, my go-to is people. I also think that, again, speaking as a player, I hope that there's not something that I'm forgetting, as I am wont to do with the amount of video games that I play, but I feel like I haven't loved any Active Blizzard games recently. There hasn't been anything that's come out that I have really gravitated towards in a while. And I sort of, in my head, I'm like, it's a change. So potentially, they change the way they release games. They change their approach to some games. It just means that we could be getting, in theory, just with a different leadership structure, potentially a different level of quality or a different approach, or one thing that I like about the Game Pass model is shorter games. So across the board, I don't want that. I don't want, my big blockbuster titles to be short.
Only those.
Correct. But I don't want Fable to be short, for example, whenever they release that. I don't want that to be a short game. But if you could give me, I loved the Battlefield 1 campaign. Of course, Battlefield's still EA, but I love that campaign of these little vignette war stories. And it was like, well, if you would do that with Call of Duty, I'd be more inclined to play it. And I do think the Call of Duty campaigns are quite good, but I'm not inclined to invest all my time in them every year when they can be so systematically similar. So to me, it's like it's same vein from a very different perspective. From a player perspective, is like, we could get different games out of this. We could get some smaller Game Pass releases, things more often, things that are a little bit more interesting and different, where I feel like I've not been tremendously interested in a lot of Activision Blizzard properties recently. I'm trying to think of what outside of...
I'm doing my usual Google of who owns PsyOps, the Mindgate conspiracy now, because that is the IP that I will one day get hold of and make more of. Because whenever a big IP purchase happens, like
I even thought that was
PsyOps
Sekiro. I was like, does that mean we get Sekiro too? But they don't own FromSoft, so there's no indication that
there's a chance they own the IP. So often a publisher will own the IP of a game they publish, even if a different developer made it.
Right.
But I assume in From Software's case, that's
so. I would think that that Activision owns the IP of Sekiro. I'm sure we could look this up and just aren't. I would think that they do, unless Microsoft does. But it's not like I would want Sekiro 2 unless FromSoft was making it. So that doesn't really interest me necessarily. Like, if there's no guarantee that it would be a FromSoft game, then I don't really want it.
If you own the PsyOps, the Mindgate conspiracy IP, I'd like to
hit
have
you
a phone
up.
call, please. Hit me up. I'm on it.
I'm trying to look up.
I doubt PsyOps probably before you started playing games, right?
Oh yeah, but I do know
Mindgate
PsyOps.
conspiracy?
I've never played PsyOps.
I need that. It's a solid 6 out of 10 game, but I would love it's my one. I think every developer has like one IP that like floats around in the background that they would love to get one day.
Obviously I can't talk about IP acquisition, but if there was ever a universe in which I was thinking about this, that, you know, the more that I do my job, the more that I realize how much I love horror games. I'm always like, what if it was scary? I'd die to work on Silent Hill. Like, if there was a new Silent Hill and I could work on that.
Well, let's get Konami. You and me, we're going together. We'll buy Konami.
That's the good shake up here.
I'll have Metal Gear.
You know, everybody's up for grabs.
You can have Silent
Hill.
We'll
put $1,000 together and we'll buy Konami.
Play, watch, listen is going to purchase Konami. We're announcing it on the show right now. Just you
wait. We're working on it. Trying to look at a list of Activision recent releases. So, in the last 12 months, it's been Call of Duty Warzone, Modern Warfare 2 campaign, Tony Hawk, good stuff. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, Crash Bandicoot. So this is not the last 12 months, but it's recent. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, which I really liked.
Crash Bandicoot's interesting. That's Microsoft getting another child-friendly franchise.
And also another mascot that was previously tied to a separate platform. Obviously, it happened with Banjo.
Spyro as well, right? That's with Activision now.
Banjo-Kazooie, obviously, it happened forever ago. But
of course, but less well-known among modern gamers.
For sure, yeah. I don't know that Crash and Spyro are either, though. They are nostalgia
Spyro
plays.
from Skylanders, because I remember I worked...
Which is Toys for Bob.
I worked around Spyro and Crash Bandicoot kind of earlier in my career, and like back then nobody cared. But yes, Skylanders, because
they have them animated.
If you show a picture of
too.
Spyro, if you show Spyro to a kid or a Crash Bandicoot, they will know what that is.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So that's potentially an interesting kind of
taking those mascots
that Microsoft haven't got.
Super interesting, and I mean I had a thought with all of these too, that it's like, you know, we always talk about what would the Microsoft version of Smash be. It's like you could they stopped making Skylanders. I used to have to review Skylanders for IGN, so I played a lot of Skylanders in my time.
Were you one of the ones that like did mouthfeel? I remember that was the big thing with Amiibos and with Skylanders. Did you ever have to do a mouthfeel review of those things?
No.
That was a big thing, wasn't it? I swear. Now I sound like a crazy person.
The last one that he did was Skylanders Imaginators, which I think was the last Skylanders. And it was really funny because I didn't give it a great review score. There's been Skylanders games that I really liked. I didn't like Imaginators as much. And I had so many parents come get mad at me. There were parents being like, my kid loves this game. Why did you give it, I don't know, a 7 or whatever I gave it?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was very funny. That was 2016.
Now those kids have grown up to flame you for every other opinion.
Exactly.
So it's a cycle of life. It's
full cycle. I'm not sure about mouthfeel though. What are you referring to?
No, I like someone in the comments will know what I'm talking about, but everyone else will think I'm just a crazy person. There was, I think, was it Polygon? Maybe it was Polygon. Someone did a bunch of reviews of like Amiibo and Skylanders. Type in Amiibo mouthfeel. I swear I'm not making this up.
Amiibo?
And they would review them based on how they felt to put in your mouth.
What? That okay.
I swear this is real.
Listen,
Please,
I
comments, back me
can't
up.
find it, but I did find a Destructoid article that was Amiibo as butt plugs ranked.
That is a different. That is. I mean, that is as close to the opposite of what I'm talking about as
it could be. I don't doubt that some degenerate has. It was probably Polygon. Some degenerate has done that.
I swear it's Polygon.
But
It was Griffin McElroy.
He did a Twitter thread. That makes sense.
No. He wrote a video series on Poly. He did loads of them.
It was Polygon.
Griffin's Amiibo Corner, and they were like 2, 3, 4 minute reviews of Amiibos based on what they felt like being put in your mouth.
My God. Doing the Lord's work.
I'm so vindicated that that's real and they didn't have some kind of weird fever dream at some point.
So the last one on the list to round it out was Call of Duty Vanguard from Sledgehammer, obviously. So that's everything that they've released since 2020, which isn't a tremendous amount of video games.
What's interesting is the number of excellent teams, though. So like Call of Duty, people kind of breeze over now, but it's
Infinity Ward,
like, is it
Raven,
you've got Infinity Ward, Raven, Sledgehammer,
Treyarch.
Each of those is and Treyarch. All 4 of those are like world-class first-person shooter studios.
Do something else.
Do anything.
The thing that's appealing about that is that maybe if they aren't under Activision as it is structurally right now, is that maybe we move one of them over to another franchise. Obviously, we had all ex-Call of Duty devs came together to create Titanfall, which is still a shooter, but I think that Titanfall 2 is like one of the best FPS campaigns we've ever had. And they've made something very different. And maybe this allows for...
It's the best Valve game Valve never
made.
Totally.
Maybe this allows for less of that, like... 3-year structure that is also, known to burn people out.
Raven
Working on
as well, like,
Call of Duty sounds very
I was
hard.
playing Raven games when I was a teenager. Like, Raven are like...
I don't know what they do on Call of Duty. I know they work on most of them. So they started working with id, didn't they? That's how Raven started? I think it was that they started working out, or it was something to do with John Romero.
Yeah, it was a lot of early...
software.
I played a lot. Yeah, Soldier of Fortune, Star Wars Jedi Knight, Wolfenstein, like they did lots of Heretic Hexen, like just
1990, discovered by John Romero, co-founder of id, who collaborated with Raven to make games using their game engine, beginning with Shadowcaster. So then they started making games with id.
That's right.
And then were bought out in 1997 by Activision. But they work on a lot of Call of Duties, but not by themselves.
I think their platform side, I think they're basically like maintaining the core framework, kind of debugging. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia.
Oh, they made Call of Duty Online. The company is
considered the face of maintaining, updating, and debugging the game. So yeah, they're like
support studio sort of
well recognized as great tech skills.
Interesting.
But yeah, so there's a lot of institutional awareness there, and a lot of it's been thrown at one specific problem. Call of Duty, they don't take a year to make each Call of Duty game. There are this stagger, this, obviously I'm talking past you to the audience, but like it's like Ubisoft. It's they're rolling these big projects. So yeah, like you say, like Call of Duty goes down to one a year, or one game that's maintained long term, and doesn't have to have a yearly iteration each time. Then suddenly some interesting studios kind of free up to potentially do completely new stuff. Yeah,
which could totally happen.
Which makes sense given Microsoft's kind of American focus. That you would, first person shooter and action games in general are still like the quintessential American genre. So yeah.
Did they acquire any sports? They did. Activision has... It's so many. I feel like they do. I don't remember what studio it is, though. I feel like
I know they've generally... Activision are one of the publishers that's moved away from licensing in general.
I mean, I could be misremembering because I don't remember what it is
moved away
anyway.
from the sports stuff. I'm just trying to find it for you.
In any case, a lot of studios there, and I think like to answer your question of what are the positives for me as a player, it is diversifying what Activision puts out, and maybe getting more things. I think is neat. Did you also see the thing about Bobby Kotick trying to buy PC Gamer?
Kotaku. Right? PC Gamer. It's such a
villainous.
Like 1940s Superman villain.
My
plot.
God, we will buy the press so they will like us.
It's actually I saw a journalist write, and it's very true of like, if you ever wanted proof that game journalism actually does matter, like there's your example, right? That actually
that's true.
Because for someone unless he is just very petty, which is entirely possible.
Yeah.
Like. Allegedly, then there must be a stock impact for that to be something that would be important kind of to him. So game journalism matters. Like that's an empirical proof of that as a concept.
Game journalists, keep telling publishers when they do things that you don't like. That's what I would take away from that. It means that you should keep it up.
A free press is essential to any republic, in my opinion. And even some aging old empires as well.
We're already at an hour. Is there anything that we haven't really covered here? Probably.
I wrote you a list of things I thought were interesting. Did we get through all of those?
Did you?
I said I did. You didn't read it. It's fine.
I don't read things you send me.
No, I understand. I wouldn't read it.
Marketplace. Trends of consolidation. Specific reason Microsoft might choose to buy right now, our guess was to do with that potentially being more valuable right now. And
it was a bargain for them.
Game Pass.
The stock price being that low. Game Pass push, but also like that was a good moment for them to buy it from a stock perspective. Like they got a good deal.
Yeah. Definitely interesting. Didn't see it coming. I'm glad that I'm not alone. But like you said, like usually you hear a whisper. Usually
you know something vague.
I would have heard at the Game Awards. Someone would have said something. But not a word.
Yeah, the Game Awards would have been the moment, right? A few people having some drinks, you'd have heard something.
Nothing. Yeah. I have friends at Activision in Australia, someone I was talking to just the other day, and I was like, big morning for you, huh? And she was like, I had no idea. So she woke up again on Australian time, so it's delayed. Just like, oh, okay. So my guess is that they kept it pretty low key. Oh my god, I just saw because of my recent searches that Danganronpa is on Game Pass right now. You should play Danganronpa, everybody. Go play Danganronpa on Game Pass. Oh my god, Danganronpa is I mean, do you like Persona? It's not that they're the same at all.
I've not played it, to be honest.
Okay, so it's that like those are the fans generally of both of those franchises. Danganronpa is absolutely a graphic novel. It's a lot of reading, but is batshit
that's fine. I like
nuts
reading.
And a lot of fun.
I know. The main thing I know about Persona is that a lot of people who are fans of me are also fans of Persona, so I probably would like it. Like that's actually a way I get recommendations is seeing what.
I mean, Persona's fantastic.
Vibes, yeah.
Persona's.
I know my games are. That's fine. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, so like I don't know if they would like, because your games are so mid.
Like, would you even compare the two?
It's weird to have them in the same conversation. I mean, the games you like are not really like Persona.
Think of them in the same.
No, that's just no.
It's like how I had to watch one episode of My Little Pony because I noticed everyone who tweets positively about Thomas Was Alone had a My Little Pony avatar for a while. Amazing. So I was like, probably I'd like My Little Pony then.
That's funny. I mean, Persona is fantastic. It's heartfelt, I think Persona 5 is one of the most stylish games ever made. RPG, whereas Danganronpa is also very stylish, very good storytelling. Yeah, it's about characters and heart, and I feel like you've got some of that going on.
Oh, not anymore. I've had my heart broken by how cruel you've been to me in the last 5 minutes.
Well, you've got to cut you down a peg sometimes, you know. So
it's important. To keep me in my place. Yeah. I understand.
Yeah, I'm doing a service. It's for the greater good. All right. Yeah, obviously very impromptu recorded episode that sadly we do not have a Troy or an Austin for because we really just did decide to do this an hour before doing it. Apologies for that, everybody. But this has been Play, Watch, Listen. I'm Alana. I'm a video game writer. And that is Mike Bithell. He is a video game director. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.